Hello, my name is Matthew, and I'm going to do the favorite author tag. Uh, Last night I watched Brian from Bookish do this tag, and it was a great discussion. He talked about um, Patrick O'Brian as his favorite author, at least at the moment, and it's a seafaring adventure historical writer. It has a huge series of books, and I loved it. It was uh, really intriguing for me. I love seafaring books, and I've never read anything by Patrick O'Brian. Um, but in any event, it was interesting, and I thought I would do it myself. The original tag was created by Bill Rutenberg. He divided it up into your favorite nonfiction author and your favorite fiction author. Um, and of course, I saw it from Brian's channel. And at first, I thought, well, my favorite author, this is a no brainer. It's Gustave Flaubert, my favorite Flaubert, my favorite writer, head and shoulders above any other writer that I've come across. I love all of his books. I love everything that I've read by this person. Madame Bovary, Sentimental Education, Bavard and Picochet, the three short stories, the Temptation of Saint Anthony and Salambo and his novella November, and I read some of his correspondence, his letters with Turgenev and George Sand, and I love it all. And he's not he's a dynamic, versatile writer. He takes on new styles and themes in between um, all of his different books that he has, and also within the books. He can change his style. He can be purple and flourishing and ornate. He can be brutal and direct. He can be funny, cynical, and thoughtful. He can have really weighty, heavy philosophical ideas and still be preposterous and ridiculous. And I love all of it. The language, for me, is just absolutely gorgeous all of the time. He was a meticulous writer, really carefully constructed his books and the sections within the books, and the chapters, and the paragraphs, and the sentences. There was a rhythm and cadence in the way that he wanted to deliver these perfect little parcels. I just love it. And for some of the prompts, that Flaubert is my favorite author. And I love how I discovered him. It was from my old friend Bob. I remember sitting with him at a coffee shop with his two chocolate labs by his side. And he's telling me about this book. He said, Bovard and Pichet by Flaubert. To this day, I don't know if it's Bovard and Picochet or Bovard and Pichet. Bob said Bovard and Pichet. And it's about these two imbecilic copy clerks. They're middle-aged, kind of dim-witted, average people that happen to meet one day on the street. They sit down on a bench and they realize that each one of them would put their initials in their hat. And it exploded into this fast friendship. One of them gets this huge inheritance and they decide to move out into the country and commit their lives to learning and experimenting and being adventurous and creative. And it becomes an encyclopedic series of subjects and topics that always result in a mishap. And it's hilarious. I remember the first time I read it, howling and laughing out loud at the predicaments and pickles that these two would get themselves into. And it was also instructive. Even today, um, it gives you a lot to think about. The idea of how dangerous it is when you just get a little bit of information, a little bit of something, and then decide that you're an expert and you know better than everyone. In the book, Bovard and Picochet decide that they're experts in medicine and they take over this town, take all of the patients away from the country doctor, and people are dying. Bodies are dropping because they're just coming up with cockamamie remedies and concoctions. And it's really, for as funny and as ridiculous as um, it's set up and framed, today, when you can just go online and be an expert on anything from reading a headline or an article, it really, the book folds back into itself, depending on how you want to read it. So my friend Bob recommended, told me, he said, you should read Bovard and Picochet. And I fell in, the next prompt is, was it a first love, love at first sight, or did you have to grow into your admiration and love for the author? And for me, reading Bovard and Picochet, that was my introduction into Flaubert, and I just thought, okay, this guy has got something that I like. And then to read Madame Bovary, then to read Sentimental Education, and to go through his catalog and realize he's not just doing one thing. He can write a private story of the tragic domestic life of a housewife, or a grand epic generational tale of the history or a historical period in France, or do a complete historical novel in Salammbô, which takes place in Carnage, and other things like that. He's just so dynamic and versatile. Perfect. Which is your favorite book by Flaubert? And at the moment, I'm going to say Sentimental Education. It's a bit like my love for the Beatles. Normally, my favorite Beatles album is just the last one that I heard. So, on any given point, it's Rubber Soul or Revolver or Abbey Road or Let It Be or the White Album. They're all so good. It's really just my most recent experience. So, Sentimental Education. It's fabulous. I love it. Deeply cynical, but it's great. Beautiful. My least favorite book is Bovard and Picochet. He died before he completed it. It's an unfinished book. That dissatisfaction, the feeling of just wanting more. We have a complete first half, and towards the end of the book, we have stitches and passages, little scenarios that editors kind of put together to give you an idea of how the book was going to be, and it's just disappointing. So my least favorite book is a book that I just wanted more, and Flaubert's life didn't allow for it. What best describes this author? For me, he's a perfect author. He's beautiful and precise and cynical and funny and instructive and entertaining. I've been saying versatile, dynamic, inventive. Really, people say, I've heard before that he invented the modern novel, which I'm not sure about, but Madame Bovary is really quite impressive. The way that it's put together in a way that feels very modern. It's a complete package instead of an introduction that plateaus into a series of events that has a conclusion. So maybe that answers that. What genre? I guess, I mean, literary fiction is the term I hear a lot on BookTube, I guess. I would normally just say he's a novelist or a fiction writer, but he has a kind of a pastoral novel and a city novel and a historical novel and a fantastical hallucinatory novel, the Temptation of Saint Anthony, which at some point I'm gonna reread and gush about it. It's so unlike his more realistic novels. Why do you love this author? And I think all of the things I've said to this point maybe makes it self-evident. Now, I watched Brian's video, and I've just sort of expressed all of the things that first popped into my mind. And I found myself at a dilemma. Now, it's an easy first choice, Flaubert. Well, that's fine. I've said why I love him so much, but he wrote in French, and I've actually never read Flaubert. I've read his translations. I've read many translations of the works that I've been talking about, the works that he wrote. I've never actually read and enjoyed the words that he wrote down. So I started thinking to myself, who would be my favorite author? It seems that your favorite author should be someone that you've actually read the things that they wrote, instead of an echo, a beautiful echo of their novels and stories and writings. And I was left at a quandary. I had a really hard time coming up with an answer. Of course it's for fun, and of course it's a moving target. There's no gun to my head or anybody's head. It's just, how do you feel at the moment? But I was kind of taken aback that there was not an immediate answer. What English language writer is my favorite? And I started going through that mental Rolodex, thinking obvious answers. Virginia Woolf, probably the most beautiful writer of English I've come across. I love Virginia Woolf's novels. I haven't read everything by her. I know she has a lot of nonfiction that I haven't read. She still has several novels of hers I haven't read, but the things that I have, I love. I love George Eliot. Middlemarch, maybe the greatest English novel for me. Maybe Moby Dick. So Herman Melville. There's a lot by Herman Melville I haven't read. These are authors that I'm not very familiar with in the way that I am with Flaubert, or a lot of the second tier writers that I kind of just like. I like Truman Capote. I love his short stories. So I was left with who is it? And I'm going to show you. This is what I was thinking. William Wordsworth. So I've spent years now, maybe 5 or 6 years, constantly revisiting Wordsworth. And he's a poet that introduced common language, plain speaking, direct discourse. It's beautiful and rhythmic and metrical. The prelude, I remember. So back again to the prompts. How did you discover William Wordsworth? And again, it was my friend Bob. And I remember we were talking, and he goes, "You should read The Prelude by William Wordsworth." And I loved it because he goes, "It's like a little book. The Prelude, it's like a little book." And it's an autobiographical poem that he wrote, presumably, for his friend Coleridge, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. It's a story of his life, and it's the work of a lifetime. And he looks inside of himself, and then he looks out in the world, and he connects those two experiences. And he wrote a wonderful, beautiful work of poetry that I constantly revisit and think about. Um, when I was thinking about like your favorite, so many books that I read, I've read once or twice, but I'm not familiar with them. I'm not constantly picking them up. It's not that it's a requirement for being a favorite, but it's a consideration. And um, I don't love everything that Wordsworth has written, but there's such a significant chunk that I do find myself going back to and thinking about. There's lines that have um, come into my own train of thought, the way I use phrases. It sounds ridiculous to say that I have Wordsworthian phrases, but there are moments where I have little um, lines of Wordsworth that just pop into my mind and come out of my mouth throughout the day. Um, we're talking about poetry, so these prompts get a little wonky. Which is your favorite from this author? And um, Lyrical Ballads is just a really impressive collection of poetry. It's a collaboration between Wordsworth and Coleridge, and I love it. For Wordsworth himself, it is The Prelude. I have. It was a lifetime's worth of work, so there's several different editions, and I have this terrific Penguin Classic, and it has 4 texts. The first one is very short, and then there's 3 others. I don't know enough to really parse between the 4, but the Prelude is just beautiful. My least favorite book, I don't really have a least favorite book. There's a general consensus that Wordsworth became markedly worse. He was a worse poet as he got older. Really fell in love with himself, got kind of stuffy, and wanted to go back and revise his poems. And not that I can really tell, but there's a general idea that all he did was ruin everything he touched. What describes this author? And I'll say that Wordsworth had a very high opinion of himself. I just recently read a biography, and he's a difficult person to respect or admire for his own character. It says nothing about the work that he made, but as a person, he's a poet, and he's companionable. He's someone that really touches my heart and my intellect and my vocabulary. He's not as big and flashy and as dynamic as Flaubert. It's a totally different reading experience for me, but it's just as important. And I admire him for that. I admire his work, and he's been a friend of mine for a very long time. And at the moment, I guess for a writer that I've actually read the words that they've written, my favorite author, I suppose, is William Wordsworth. And again, it's a moving target. So if you've been watching this far, thank you. Please let me know your thoughts. I would love to know what your favorite author is. The last question is, who do you tag? And anybody that wants to do it, if you're interested, I'd be more than happy I'd be more than happy. If you're interested, you can. It's open to anybody, so I'll just leave it at that. Um, and leave a comment if you would like. I'd love to hear your thoughts and who your favorite authors are. So thank you.